All right, so again, here's the, we did something similar, like I said, with test max um, in this example here. So pretty much the same thing. So you go through. So I is, go through the logic here, but I is set to 5, then to 2, then it says k is equal to the max of I and j. Then what's going to happen is it's going to jump, because you're calling max, is it's going to jump to that method there. It's going to literally go to that method. We call it calling the method. And it's essentially like the program in memory just moves to where max is and continues executing from there. So it goes through all that. Does the if statement. The result is 5 because 5 is greater than 2. And then it returns it. Now we're back in main, and we simply continue with the execution with the output. Let's see. A return statement is required for a value returning method. So yeah, so you have to give a return statement no matter what. You must have a default return statement. So, for example, this would not work because return point from the method must return a value. So if we go ahead and we put this one in here again, we're going to get an error, and I'll tell you what the error is quite simply. This is the nice thing about using something like NetBeans. So here you get a mirror, and if you hold over, you can says illegal character. Okay, that's not what I was expecting. It's not what I was expecting. Let's see. It might be we did a copy and paste that's not quite right. Let's see. Okay. So here's our error. Missing return statement. And that's because even though logically you could look at this and say, well, logically one of these has to return, and that's true, but Java's not that smart. You really have to put the writing on the wall for Java. Now you're okay. Because you're saying, because Java knows that if you have an else, that there's going to be a return no matter what. It's not smart enough to look at your logic and say, well, if it's greater than, it's equal to, or it's less than, well, it's got to be one of those three. No programming language is actually intelligent enough to figure that out. So you have to tell it. That's why. And so, by the way, this max could have easily been rewritten without that stuff. You easily could have just said return. And this would actually be more efficient. I mean, I'm not sure why they created a variable there, but just to show you how that could have been done too. And then there's no need to create that additional integer and use that memory. So, but anyway, so that's basically what this here is saying, is that Java's not smart enough to figure that one of these three combinations has to be true. So, you have to tell it, okay, here's the else, so definitely it's going to be returning an int. You don't have to worry about it not returning an int. One of the benefits of methods is reuse. I mean, you can reuse them everywhere. The max method can be reused anywhere. You can create a new test class. You can invoke math wherever you want. If it's a static method, we'll get into this a little bit later, but if it's a static method, it could be used anywhere by prefixing the class name. Probably won't get into that just yet. We'll probably see an example of that later. I can't. I've got a new Okay, any questions so far? This shows you call stacks. This is kind of an interesting thing, but I wouldn't worry too much about it just yet. It kind of shows you the way memory is used on something called how methods are called, and it's don't worry if you don't follow it right now. Basically, it creates memory for variables in the main method. K, J, and I are the three variables we create. Then when the method is called, it creates this memory. Then the max method is created, and then in addition to the memory created in main, which is still there, max then creates some additional memory. And it does its thing while it's being executed. This main is still there. It's basically suspended. It's kind of like being on a call and waiting for someone to stop talking so you can start talking. Max is doing all the talking right now while it's executing, and main is just on the phone going, yeah, whatever. And basically, it's like a conversation. When one method calls another method, it's like a phone call, basically. And the method that's doing all the work, all the executing, is basically the one doing all the talking. And the one that's not doing anything is basically on the receiver, waiting for the other one to shut up so they can talk. Basically, you can think of it that way. So that's what's going on right here. Max is creating some memory and result, and eventually it's going to give it back to main, the result, which is now 5. Now, you see when that happens, when Max returns a value, it goes away. So, it's almost like Max has it say, tells main what main wants to know, and then Max says goodbye immediately and hangs up. So you can think of that as just main calls Max, wants to know some value. Do you have any rooms available for next weekend? And Max says yes and hangs up the phone. And that's it. So main now knows that there's rooms available. It doesn't know much of anything else about it, but it knows that. So it's like one method calling another is literally like a phone call. But when the called method returns the answer, it hangs up immediately. And it's not like, yes, we have rooms, do you want to reserve one? No, it's like, yes, we have rooms, bye. And hangs up. And then once main is finished, it stops executing and we say the stack is empty. Well, probably not empty, but the memory for all those methods is gone. That's kind of the best analogy I could think of, one method calling another. It really is kind of like a phone call that ends abruptly. So, does that make sense? Anyone have any questions on that one? So what do we have here? This thing, they're doing some animation. Looks like they're just gonna. Okay, alright, so this shows you what's happening as well. K gets created and it calls Max. Then Max jumps down there, and now we can see that Max portion of the stack is now creating memory. Num1 and num2 are created. Now it creates result, executes the if statement. Now result has a value. It returns that value to main, and now you can see that Max goes away. This return statement is like hanging up the phone. Yes, goodbye. That's basically what return result is. Result is yes, and return is bye. Hanging up, just putting the receiver, or I guess if you're on a cell phone, just clicking the end call button. And it's over. So it's basically like a phone call that ends abruptly. Alright, let's see if I have this test avoid method. I do. Yeah. Okay, so avoid method, the first method we ever worked, which is the main method, is avoid method, and it just simply means it returns nothing. And you can do that. The method may be intended to do something, but not return a value. In this particular case, you're saying print grade. We pass a grade in, and then we've got some misstatements that looks at the numeric value, and based on the numeric value, prints a letter grade out. The print is not returning it to main, it's simply printing it, and that's it. So there's no reason for print grade to return anything. You just want it to print. Essentially, that's all you get. The grade is C, and that was from right here. Right? Because it wasn't greater or equal to 90, it wasn't greater than or equal to 80, it is greater than or equal to 70, so it prints C. This one is another where it says end print lines. Basically, all this would do is print Java 5, welcome to Java 5 times. So, we don't really need to see how that works. I mean, I guess we could real quick. Just put that as a method. Now our last one somewhere. I think. Where was the last one we looked at? So we can just go ahead and make this another method in this one we've been playing with here. And then main, and just go ahead and, in addition to that, I'll just leave that alone. Say end print line Java 5 and why didn't you find it? Not find symbol. That's interesting. End print line. Okay. Let's give it a whirl and see what happens. And you get welcome to Java a bunch of times. So it does basically exactly what it says it's going to do. You have to invoke the method in the order that the parameters it wants. So if it's looking for a text first, that's what you have to do. And the number second. You can't decide to just invoke it in a different order. You have to pass the parameters in the order it expects. Any questions so far on anything? Okay.